Hello, episode 32, no 33 I think, of the Notcast today, 22nd of December 2020. So yesterday, winter solstice, the shortest day of what feels like the longest of years, certainly the longest year that I've ever lived. And today, talking about U2's, I think it's their fifth album, The Joshua Tree, released in 1987. Now, the BBC held up what was the best albums of the 80s kind of poll recently, and The Joshua Tree won the best album of the 80s. Now, much as I love The Joshua Tree, it's not the best album of the 80s. In fact, it's not the best album of 1987. It's not even the best album of March 1987, because Prince released Sign of the Times in March 1987. And frankly, Sign of the Times beats The Joshua Tree. So in the U2 ranking, a lot of people would put The Joshua Tree as their number one A1 favourite U2 album. I wouldn't. In fact, I think it just about scrapes into my top 10. So in the top 2/3 of U2 albums. But before we get into the album, we're talking about that, I need to talk a little bit of business about what was happening with the band at the time. Now, if you don't have it, and you can find a copy, I strongly recommend you get a copy of this book by Bill Flanagan, U2 at the End of the World. It is a step-by-step, day-by-day, blow-by-blow account of the life of the band from the moment when the Berlin Wall fell and Bono woke up in Brezhnev's bed in the communist house in Berlin, to the moment when the Zoo TV tour ended in December 1993. I think that was in Tokyo, I think, on the 10th of December. Now, in this book, there are some very interesting little tidbits and revelations about the life and times of the band. So I'm going to have to get a rewind to August 1987, when the band were finishing recording the Joshua Tree album. They'd given it the title, The Joshua Tree, but originally it was called The Two Americas, before they changed the name of the album. And the band had a meeting with Island Records, and they were owed, by their estimations, around about £5 million in royalties. And Island Records said to the band, we haven't got the money. In fact, Island Records were looking potentially at bankruptcy at the time. Pretty serious state of affairs. And so the band were faced with two options, one of which is they could demand the money that they were rightfully owed by Island Records, and that would put Island Records probably out of business, with the consequence that U2 wouldn't have a record label to be able to release their album on. They wouldn't necessarily have control over their old material. The assets that Island Records had might have been sold to somebody else, who might have then turned I Will Follow or October or Sunday Bloody Sunday into an advert for tyres or planes or airlines, anything really. Maybe even iPods, if someone had invented an iPod at that point. And the band chose instead to have a negotiation with Island Records. And as I understand it, on the basis of what's sketchily described in here, rather than have the £5 million in cash, U2 chose to have just over 10% of stocks in Ireland, on the grounds that Chris Blackwell, the band's Ireland's label manager, thought, by the way, I'm going to turn it over just to keep the picture interesting, thought that the label might be worth around about £50 million, and so therefore over the £5 million would probably be working around about 12-13%. Now, Paul McGuinness and the band's accountant felt that Island Records was probably worth closer to £34 million, and so therefore, instead of having the outstanding royalties from the Unforgettable Fire album of £5 million, the band had somewhere in the region of 12-13% stock value of Island, which, at that time was a very prudent financial move. And I'll kind of explain why it was a prudent financial move when we get to talking about the album. Now, we have the position of, in March 1987, U2 releasing The Joshua Tree. Here is the original 1987 single LP release. And to keep things fresh and vibrant. We have the 1987 CD edition. Now you'll notice that there is a slightly different picture on the sleeve between the CD and the vinyl editions of the albums. I think this was the first time that a CD, LP and cassette was released simultaneously in U2's career. And they had slightly different pictures on each of the three formats. And I'd like to thank Harry and AJ at U2 Songs, and anybody else who works there that I don't talk to on a regular basis, for their diligence in putting together all of this information, so that it seems like I know what I'm talking about, where really I'm just very good at Google. So the band found themselves with 12 to 13%, maybe even as high as 15% of Island Records stock. So they were invested in making sure that their career was successful and that their records sold particularly well. So with that in mind, the album, The Joshua Tree, was released in March 1987. Until the release of Sign of the Times, it was the best album of that particular month. And in my opinion, it is not the best U2 album. But I know a lot of people really, really like it. So to me, creatively, it felt a little bit like the band had taken, they'd followed like the creative avenue of The Unforgettable Fire, and then they decided that they were going to take a step back, go back a junction, and start something else. So the Joshua Tree really feels to me like it's a combination of the best parts of War and the best parts of The Unforgettable Fire. So we've got the atmospherics, we've got the layering, we've got the sonic textures, we've got the immaculate production, but at the same point we've got a slightly more mature songwriting, but it isn't the kind of songwriting that's direct and to the point and telling you that War is very, 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 very wrong indeed. Yes, it is. I know I'm treating my finger as if this is a 3D movie, but it isn't. I don't even know why I'm doing it. First single from the album was With or Without You. Now this here is a 12-inch single released in the UK. Also have the 7-inch single released in the UK. Now all of these photographs were taken from around about the same time as the album cover sessions, give or take a day or two. I think they were shot in a place called Bodie in America. Not sure exactly where. And on the CD single, we have a slightly different photograph of the Edge, pulling a slightly different look there. See, he's scratching his ear in this version, and this one he's with his hands crossed. I know this is the kind of content that just keeps you lying awake at night going, my God, that is so interesting. Also, by the way, on the B-side of With or Without You, there is a track called Luminous Times, Hold On to Love, which the band haven't played live. There's also Walk to the Water, but Bono is clearly of the view and has said that he feels that those two songs really belonged on the album, and that With or Without You makes more sense completely when you listen to those songs as well. So there is an argument to be said for the Joshua Tree being a double LP. It's not one I subscribe to. In fact, I would subscribe to the fact that maybe the Joshua Tree maybe needs to be a song shorter, as I will shortly explain. Now, following up from that, 1987 album release of the Joshua Tree, issued in a gatefold sleeve. Lovely picture there of very of freshly rich men, although at that point they were obviously concerned about their financial position. Now, the Joshua Tree itself doesn't appear on this; it appears on the back sleeve here. Although I've always been of the view that the 2017 reissue version of the album, which contains a gold foil embossed outline of the Joshua Tree, that is a much better cover image. That's really iconic. I think this should have been the album cover, but then I've never been one who's particularly enjoyed pictures of the band on the front of the album. Now, in 2000 and I think it's 17, possibly 2018, 2017, a 2 LP edition of the album was released. This is the HMV coloured vinyl, gold vinyl UK edition of the album, which breaks the album up into a double album, 2 songs on side 2 being Bullet the Blue Sky and Running to Stand Still. Not convinced that the album should be on 2 LPs, to be honest. I personally would have thought that actually a kind of like a 2 LP deluxe edition of the album with the B-sides would be better. And we move on. So after that, album came out, band thought it was going to be successful. With or Without You was a huge hit. What I would also like to point out about With or Without You is that it's got one of the best guitar solos of all time on, probably because it isn't actually a guitar solo. It's a gentle acoustic strum as the song fades out. Most guitar fretboard wankers would be widdly wooing all over the place. With this, Bono and the Edge just plays a very gentle acoustic guitar coda, which really seals the song, and really ties into the idea that less is in fact actually more. So here we have the 12-inch single of I Still Haven't Found Where I'm Looking For. Second track on the album, second single, video recorded in Las Vegas, presumably by people that didn't have a clue who the band were. It's backed with Spanish Eyes and Deep in the Heart. And Spanish Eyes, by the way, is a track that the band still play live whenever or when they play Spain. Obviously, there's no gigs going on at the moment now. They're in Tier 4 restrictions. Great track, cracker live, but I've never seen it. Sometimes I've half thought, well, maybe I should actually go over to Spain and see them. But the time I did go to see them in Spain, they didn't play this song. But then the time that I did see them in Spain was the opening night of the 360 tour, where I saw the live debuts of an awful lot of songs, and that was quite something indeed. So I still haven't found what I'm looking for. By the way, there is an alternate cover of this on what bafflingly is the long box cassettes. So in ye olde days, when they sold cassettes and they sold cassette singles, they sometimes would put them in long boxes, which would be cardboard boxes, which would be about 12-inch high, so it could slot into the LP racks. And there's a slightly different picture of Larry looking in a slightly different direction. I know, again, this is the content that keeps you awake at night as I talk through the band's discography. Here's a 7-inch single. If you had one of those record players that has an automatic switch off on the 7-inch, because the 7-inch has 2 songs on, I never got to hear the end of Deep in the Heart unless I used my dad's record player when I was younger. So instead I just bought the 12-inch single. It was cheaper than buying a new record player. And finally then, the third single in most of the world from the Joshua Tree is this, Where the Streets Have No Name. And this is, a stone dead classic. The studio recording of this is one of the best studio recordings that's ever happened, and the live versions blow the studio recordings out of the goddamn water. So this is 12-inch single here. It's backed with Race Against Time, Silver and Gold, and The Sweetest Thing. The Sweetest Thing here is a pretty embryonic demo. The band later revisited it and put it out as a single in 1998 when they needed a single for their best of 1980 to 1990 album. Here's a 7-inch, and somewhat surprisingly, somewhere in here, oh, hang on a minute, I forgot to mention it. I still haven't found one of them. This is the CD single. Just the same photograph of Adam all the way through. Now, interestingly, CD and the 7-inch and the 12-inch, the single versions of Where the Streets Have No Name, have extra backing vocals that aren't available on any other version of Where the Streets Have No Name. So if you can find the CD single, that is where the version with the backing vocals by The Edge, which he also now sings live, are on this. Now, Where the Streets Have No Name is stone dead, U2 classic track. I always have a moment whenever I see U2 and they perform Where the Streets Have No Name, is that I want to look around and see the audience losing their shit at that point in the song. I don't want to see what's happening on stage. I'm not interested in what's happening on stage when the Edge first pulls out the guitar notes to Where the Streets Have No Name. I want to see what's happening with the crowd, because being in the crowd is what makes a live show as important as the band. The band can play the same song the same way 600 times in a row. The crowd is always different. The room is always different. The feeling in the room is always different. And there's a huge moment of iconic imagery that now is associated with Where the Streets Have No Name, which is a solid red backdrop that then turns into white. And that moment where all the lights go on and the whole stadium's lit up like it's Christmas, and especially on the 360 tour when the stage looked like a Christmas tree, is that you're kind of watching the version of Christmas with U2 performing live in front of your eyes. Again, as I said, cutting down on the caffeine, and so be it. But it's an incredible moment to experience live. I really hope we'll get to experience it again. No idea if we will, but I'm sure we will. Now, Moving on from Where the Streets Have No Name, we have a fourth single, In God's Country, that I think it was released in the US. This is where Bono finally gets to appear on a single sleeve. You know, we've had Adam, we've had Edge, we've had Bono, we had Larry. Here's Bono here, looking as cheerful as any other member of the band here on the front of the single. Now, this wasn't released in most of the world. I think it was released in the US and maybe a couple of other countries as a single. It was released as a 7-inch, which was by far the most common format. And it was also released as a 12-inch, which is fairly uncommon. It took me until probably last year before I was able to track down a 12-inch of In God's Country. But also, you know, not every country got In God's Country. If you were in Australia and New Zealand, you got One Tree Hill as a single. And perhaps one of the interesting things about One Tree Hill as a single was not only you get that, you get Bullet the Blue Sky and Running to Stand Still on the B-side. You also got a lyric insert in here, which is a photograph, I think, of the One Tree Hill with the monument and the lyrics that sit alongside there. Now, I have a signature on the back of this. I don't know whose signature this is. If you know whose signature it is, tell me. It could be Helen, it could be Adam, I have no idea. Now, the photo here is by Kerry Brown of the One Tree Hill, and actually I have no idea if this was included in the 7-inch when it was sold or not. It's certainly included on my copy, which is I think it's the Australian 7-inch single here. It was not cheap, is probably the best way of describing it. So this is licensed to Festival Records in Australia and Festival in New Zealand. I think this is the version from Australia, even though it's got the island logo on the label. So there we are. Those are the singles from the Joshua Tree. I've given you a little tour of parts of my record collection. There's a lot more to the Joshua Tree than just the album and the singles. First and foremost, I think the sequencing of the album could be improved, and this sounds a little bit arrogant, but hear me out. I did a previous video where I talked about album sequencing and the orders in which you've got now. You've got, and although this kind of does happen on the double LP version here from 2017, is that effectively you can actually skip aside and you can go from Where the Streets Have No Name, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, and With or Without You, to the start of side 4 with One Tree Hill. So With or Without You kind of fades out over time, and then Bullet the Blue Sky starts up with a martial drum beat. It really breaks the mood, and it really changes the mood of the album. Whereas I'd have preferred a more gentle sequence that would have taken One Tree Hill and then followed it with In God's Country and Trip Through Your Wires. And Trip Through Your Wires, if you have to take a song off the album, the song I would take off would be Trip Through Your Wires, because it's a bit of a nothing song. It's got no drama in it, really. It starts, it ends, it's got a bit of harmonica, it's got a bit of singing in it. But Bullet the Blue Sky and Running to Stand Still, two U2 classics, played live until very, very recently, played at the last of the Joshua Tree tour shows in 2019. Running to Stand Still is a thematic sequel to Bad, so I've always thought that maybe you should play Running to Stand Still and Bad back to back, but Bullet the Blue Sky should start side 2 of the album, and then therefore you'd have Bullet the Blue Sky, Running to Stand Still, and then Red Hill Mining Town, then Exit, then Mothers of the Disappears. Now that would be a bit of a slump in terms of the feeling, but on the other hand, having Bullet the Blue Sky as your 4th track, it really breaks the somewhat gentle, plaintive, romantic mood that you've got on With or Without You. So U2 started touring the album, and they were not shy of stepping on a stage. This is the period of the band's life, by the way, where I've got the most bootleg releases. So first and foremost, I have this one, double LP, U2, Native Son, recorded I think in Rome, 27th of May 1987, opening date of the European part of the Joshua Tree tour. Double album, audience recording, bit crappy, but good to have. Next one is U2, Ready for the World. I listened to this in preparation on Sunday. It's a good audience recording of the Birmingham NEC show on the 3rd of June 1987. And we've got a very unusual set list because they play Maggie's Farm for the last time. There's also a cover version of People Get Ready, Knocking on Heaven's Door, and there's a very long version of Bad that features Walk on the Wild Side, Ruby Tuesday, and Sympathy for the Devil. It's a great show, and you can really hear how keen and excited the audience was. Every time U2 stepped on a stage in 1987, it was probably the best night of the audience's lives so far, or the best place in the world for anyone in that audience to be. You never get the impression that U2 played a particularly bad show in 1987. I'm sure they did, and on a couple of occasions I know they did. But the band was going full pelt, full speed. That is. Next one is Autumn Fire. I bought this in 2007, maybe 2008 from Rat Records in Camberwell. Cost me £7.50 at the time. At those days, people were junking their vinyl collections. You could pick up vinyl dirt cheap. Obviously these days it probably would be 50 quid or something ridiculous. But at the time, you almost couldn't give these away. So I'm really glad that I kept my record player. And that's a recording, I think, from Croke Park, which is a good show, although I haven't heard it for a long period of time. And this one here is the last of the vinyl bootlegs that I've got from the Joshua Tree. This is the Cork Connection recorded at Cork City on the 8th of August 1987 on the last show of the Joshua Tree European Tour. And from memory, I think it cost me about £18. I bought it around about 1990, 1991. It was a couple of weeks worth of pocket money, or many hours sat at a desk. Oh, pardon me. Many hours sat at a desk as a 17-year-old kid doing a job I didn't like in order to buy records I did like and have kept and have loved forever. And after that, the next one is A Very Special Christmas, which features a cover version by U2 of Christmas Baby Please Come Home, recorded by the band in late 1987 and released on the 1987 Christmas album. This also has Bruce Springsteen on, Eurythmics doing Winter Wonderland. Sadly, it is, I think, one of the few records which does have Bon Jovi on it by default. It's got Backdoor Santa by Bon Jovi. Good God, I don't know why. And around about the same time that they recorded Christmas Baby Please Come Home, they also recorded a cover version of Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly's Jesus Christ, which was released as a Dutch promo 7-inch single. Here it is. Great track, absolutely great track, love it to bits. Wish it was better known. Now, after that, the band was still on tour, and I'm going to show you, I think, a couple of other things here. So here's a book by Steve Averill, which is called Stealing Hearts at a Travelling Show, and it's got some creative ideas that the band were working through for the Joshua Tree album. So although the picture or the quality of the picture that you've got here is pretty poor, here are some alternate sleeve designs that the band made for, or Steve Averill made for it, one of which was the Zabriskie Point Park, I think. Another one here is the band standing by what looks to be a plane, and then the third one of, again, the hills and mountains in the background. And there was a tour booklet, which luckily I've got here. Now, if you bought a tour t-shirt, and the band had a lot of leftover tour t-shirts, by the way, at the end of the stadium legs for the Joshua Tree. If you bought a tour t-shirt, which I remember buying one of these for $3.99 from HMV in Birmingham, you also got the tour programme was shrink wrapped inside it, because frankly they needed to sell the stuff. And again, lots of pictures by Anton Corbijn of the band standing moodily outside various roads, abandoned buildings, and lots of ponytails and hats, alongside some text and some other bits and bobs that go in there. There's also, how many U2 books have you got, Mark? I've never counted. Maybe I'll count for my next episode. There's a book here, U2 and I, which is U2 photographs by Anton Corbijn. There's about 50 pages of pictures from the Joshua Tree era in this book. It's pretty expensive, this book. I paid £8 for my copy from Amazon. And when it arrived, it had £10 worth of postage on because it had come from the US, which means they were practically giving it to me, and all I was doing was paying the postage. But again, keep your eyes out on those things. Now, what happens after that? Well, there's a few other things that have happened. I haven't mentioned this bootleg CD yet, which is Rock's Hottest Ticket, recorded in Chicago in 1987. It's widely regarded as one of the best audience recordings of the tour, double CD, and yeah, well worth getting, but hard to get and hard to listen to. The band also, for the I think 1997, for the 10th anniversary of the album, they did an episode of a TV show called Classic Albums, where people talk through the albums. Here's the DVD version. Here is the less amazing VCD version that I still can't play. The band all dressed in pop outfits with weird and unusual hats and haircuts and dye jobs, talking about the album from 10 years previously. And you can get to hear, you know, parts of the multi-tracks for some of the songs and some of the other pieces. Actually, this period of the band really well documented. And it's really interesting and fascinating to hear the band talk through this album. I wish they had something like this for each one of their records. It's fascinating listening to hear them talk about. But I think they felt perhaps a little exposed by the Joshua Tree period. And during the Joshua Tree period, they also filmed the Rattle and Hum film and album. And this is, I think, one of the shows from that tour. It's a bootleg recording on DVD of the band at Syracuse in, I think, October 1987. Full-length show, apart from, I think, the first minute of Bad. Bono has broken his arm during the show, so he doesn't play guitar, and he's manfully coping with it. Although it's just a nice little DVD extra. It'd be a lovely type of thing that maybe you would have included in the 2007 20th anniversary box set. So this was I think the first album specific reissue that the band put out, was this 2007 box set here of the Joshua Tree, which has the album. It has a bonus CD with all of the B-sides plus 4 previously unreleased songs on, being Beautiful Ghost, Wave of Sorrow, Desert of Our Love, Rise Up, and Chicken America. I hesitate to call Beautiful Ghost a song, because really it's more of an ambient intro type thing. The bonus DVD on this is U2 Live at Paris from 1987, that was on European television, a documentary of with or without, a documentary called Outside It's America, which is about 45 minutes long. Kind of gives you a prototype feel for Rattle and Hum, but it lacks the structure, and it lacks, I think, the sharpness of editing. It's also got in it, by the way, promo videos for Bullet the Blue Sky and In God's Country, and I think Spanish Eyes and a couple of other songs in there. And it's also got alternate versions of the video for With or Without You, and the previously unseen video for Red Hill Mining Town. So let's have a quick look inside this box set. Double CD, DVD, book, and photographic prints. So, photographic prints in here, very familiar to the Unforgettable Fire kind of set of prints that we've got. More pictures of people standing moodily in the desert somewhere in America. There's a book which has in here, features again the gold foil Joshua Tree logo, text, interviews, lyrics, photographs, all that type of thing. And then 3 CDs, or three discs featuring the Joshua Tree. We've got this one here, which I think that's the bonus audio CD, and then this one here, which is the one I return to frequently, which is the live DVD and documentary material. Now, the 2007 edition of the album was the first time that the original LP artwork was standardised worldwide and used on the CD, because the CD cover, as I showed you previously, was a more impressionistic, blurry shot of the band with different ratios from the same session. So, with all that box rustling going ahead, all got a bit quiet for a while, until we got to, hang on a minute, 2017. So here's the 30th anniversary edition of the Joshua Tree album. It was released as 4 CDs. I think it was released as 7 LPs. Let's have a look and see what's in this bad boy. Now, like the previous conversation that I've had with you around the All That You Can't Leave Behind box set, I am underwhelmed with the contents of this set for the price that it retails for. It retails for about £84.99, give or take a penny or two. So let's have a look in this bad boy and see what we've got. So we've got, first off, the Joshua Tree 30th anniversary collection. There's also a download card which just made an Escape for Glory. So we've got the album in a triple gatefold set, 4 CDs here. So you'll be familiar with the Joshua Tree studio album on CD1, live at Madison Square Garden from the 28th of September 1987 on CD2, some remixes on CD3, and B-sides and rarities on CD4. So let's have a look and see what we've got. We've got a lovely booklet in here, again detailing all that. These look familiar, don't they? But I mean, effectively, it's the 2007 version with some extra, not that great remixes in, and the live show. And by the way, the live show is, I think, available to purchase in full from a website called Wolfgang's Vault. So Wolfgang's Vault contains a number of live recordings of the band. In order to get it to fit onto one CD, that live recording has been edited. Here's some photographs by Anton Corbijn. So 12 inch by 12 inch. If you're absolutely desperate for wall space and quite want pictures of U2 to do it, this is ideal for you. If you don't, or if you're like me and you've got next to no wall space and too much stuff to stick on it, then that's another problem. But also, you know, it's a tasty package. It feels hefty. This is a nice book. These are the Joshua Tree photographs, and the Edge took a camera and took lots and lots of photographs during the sessions that they shot the album cover here. So all of these are more than interesting, but again, not worth £84.99 in my opinion. These boxes are music delivery systems, and I mean, realistically, a CD should cost you no more than £10, so that would be £40. Would you pay an extra £40 for 16 art prints by Anton Corbijn and a book by The Edge? And I think the answer to that would have to be no, I wouldn't. Nice try, but no, not £84. I mean, obviously, I appear far more enthusiastic when I come to rubbishing the All That You Cannot Leave Behind album on a previous episode, but it's been a very long year. I'm very tired now. I'm feeling every one of my years, and quite a few extra years on top of that today, so you're not going to get that degree of hyperbole and possible general annoyance. Okay, so without wishing to over-egg the pudding, 2017 also saw the release of an 11 LP box set version of the Joshua Tree. Again, I much prefer this cover. It's much better. And again, this was heavily discounted from a major online retailer named after a major river. It weighs probably about the same as a small car. It's a really hefty beastie. And so the 2017 edition again has the Edge's photo book. I think this is exactly the same in dimension and size. It has a download card. It has the silver foil sticker which goes on the outside of the box that's inside this book here. And it has again lots of pictures of the band taken by The Edge. It's got the photographs by Anton Corbijn, again in an identical sleeve here. These are colour, and then it's got seven LPs. Sorry, I think I said originally it was 11. 11 is All That You Can't Leave Behind. So we've got the Joshua Tree album as a double LP, lovely inner sleeves, and on heavy 180 gram vinyl there. All looks extremely familiar. The only thing it really does is adds an extra vinyl disc into the set, and this is one of the sets which is the remixes, outtakes, and B-sides. And I think what I will say around this is not designed, or this is not sequenced in a way that is made to be listened to. It's got remixes of One Tree Hill, Bullet the Blue Sky, Running to Stand Still, Red Hill Mining Town, which has a new vocal sung by Bono, a remix of With or Without You, the Flood mix of Where the Streets Have No Name, which from memory is absolutely awful. It hasn't got the remix of Where the Streets Have No Name, by the way, that's featured on the 2012 Olympics soundtrack album, Isle of Wonder, which was, by the way, should have been on here, I think. And it's got all the B-sides as well as a solo track by Bono called Silver and Gold. It's got Beautiful Ghost, Wave of Sorrow, Desert of Our Love, Rise Up, Drunk Chick in America, all making their first appearance on vinyl, alongside discs 3, which is all the B-sides from the relevant albums. Now, where the packaging does take a mild leap here is we've got track identification sheets, we've got photographs of the boxes and lyrics on there. So, for example, rough notes around In God's Country, and a scan of lyrics there. Should talk about the sequencing for the album, by the way. Sequencing for Joshua Tree was by Kirsty MacColl, who died 20 years ago this week, sadly murdered by an idiot with a speedboat, I think in Mexico. Don't quote me on that. I'm operating solely off memory at this point. So we have the 3 triple LP outtakes, oddities, and bolted on after the fact unnecessary remixes. None of the remixes really stand out to me. It seems to me that the remixes exist in order to pad out the set. This is the real beastie here. This is the reason I bought the vinyl set. It's an official live release of a full-length live show, spread over a double LP with inner sleeves. This really should have had a standalone release. It's a lovely thing, and if, like me, you don't necessarily feel like buying box set reissues, now the approach I take with box set reissues, I'm not buying the album to own the album again. I'm buying the extra stuff which hasn't previously been released. This is the bait. So this is the thing that made me go, yes, I need to get it. Because effectively, Rattle and Hum, which I'll touch upon in a future episode, is about a third live, 2/3 studio, plus a live film. And it is, the performances in Rattle and Hum and on this tour are white hot. The band are absolutely at the apex of their abilities at that time. Playing really they're out of their skins. They're playing so well, and you can really hear that in the recordings. Is that the band are on it? They're on point, and they're playing a blinder. Madison Square Garden. This is edited slightly. So, for example, Bad's not on here. There's a couple of other songs that aren't on here. I still haven't found what I'm looking for appears twice, because there's a version of I still haven't found what I'm looking for with, I think, a gospel choir called the New Voices of Freedom. It's that performance is on the Rattle and Hum film. It's also on this disc, so effectively you do get a little bit of repetition from Rattle and Hum. But in order to fit this onto one CD, they've had to edit it down to just a few seconds under 80 minutes. So you get a great live album in the box set, but sadly it's locked inside the box set. It's a wonderful performance, this, and as far as I'm concerned, the definitive Joshua Tree live document, and I wish it was more readily available than on the Joshua Tree box set. So that gives you an overview of all the different versions of the Joshua Tree, the singles, the album, the multitude of photographs, the various reissues and extra bits and bobs that go with it. Again, I'll just talk about the album. I think it's a really good album, but really good isn't in the top 10 of U2 albums. If it is, it's maybe number 10. It's a very good, solid album. I've reappraised it after seeing it performed live in 2017. I think it's a better album having seen it played live, but as a record itself, it's not 100% in my wheelhouse, because I prefer music with a little bit more complexity, a little bit more guile, a little bit more playfulness around it. It's a very direct album. It's a spiritual sequel to War. It's not a sequel to The Unforgettable Fire. It's a direct and straightforward record that really is very clear about how You know, love is great, God is mysterious. The devil is tempting, sex is weird, El Salvador and American governmental intervention is bad, heroin is bad, the closing down of mining towns because there's no money, that's bad too. Um, what else is bad? Death, grief, murder, psychosis, and kidnapping your children and throwing them out of helicopters. Those are all bad things. It's a great album. I love it to bits. It's not my favourite U2 album because I think that they have made better records. But at this point, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all for your comments and interest. I do and have a list of things which I'm going to be talking about in the near future. Not sure what, not sure when. I am now off work for a week and a half, which is my longest period of holiday since this time last year, actually. So I am a little bit tired and a little bit frayed around the edges. And if I were a cartoon character, I'd have those little dots around my chin that indicates that I haven't shaved. Although, as you've probably noticed, I haven't shaved because I am the proud possessor of a human male beard. And like a lot of people, it's not because I'm a hipster, it's because I'm lazy and shaving takes an awful lot of time, and also, it hides my face, and I quite like not having the face that I've actually got, so I'm in disguise as a grown-up. Don't tell anyone, really. I still am only about 17 on the inside. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you, and I will catch up with you in another episode. I can't predict what the next episode is going to be. It might be about Return of the Jedi. It might be about Rattle and Hum. It might be the top 10 David Fincher films that I've ranked in order. It might be discussing what that weird and unusual noise is in the background, which is my son playing his Xbox. I have no idea, but thank you. And if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, let me know. I'll put my alternate running order for the Joshua Tree in the comments section, and I will see you again. I now have an appointment with a tub of chocolate ice cream. Thank you very much, and goodbye.